Garden Success is brought to you in part by Martha's Bloomers, celebrating 25 years in Central Texas and offering gardeners a variety of plants grown for the region, along with a wide assortment of tools, potting containers, and a full-service restaurant. Martha's Bloomers, located on Highway 6 in Navasota.
Welcome to Garden Success with Stephen Brueggerhoff, the show designed to help you have a bountiful garden and a beautiful landscape. Call in now with your lawn and garden questions at 979-845-5689 or email your questions to gardensuccess@tamu.edu. And now, Texas A&M AgriLife Extension horticulturist Stephen Brueggerhoff.
Well, howdy, friends, and welcome to Garden Success. You know, it's another beautiful day, and we prayed for rain, and guess what we got? And we got quite a bit of it, actually. I know there's been some local flooding, certainly around the Bryan College Station area. Of course, our hearts go out to folks in the Central Texas as well. They're getting hammered right now. But, you know, we can't look a horse in the mouth, or whatever they say. You know, I can't remember the saying that goes along with that. But I'm thankful that we've had moderated rain. Of course, we did have an abundance, but it's starting to taper off now. Groundwater will be recharged somewhat, and I'm really looking forward to the benefits of that as well. You know, this is a live call-in program, and I'd want to thank you for your support and participation with Garden Success. You can call in 979-845-5689. I'm really pleased to inform you that we are having a monthly program now called Ask the Plant Doctor, and I'm very delighted that we do have the director of the Texas Plant Disease Diagnostic Lab, Dr. Kevin Ong, with us. I'll call him Kevin.
Hello, Stephen. Thank you for including us in this program, and we're glad to be able to at least share some of our expertise once a month with your listeners.
Yes, sir. I really do appreciate it, Kevin. As well as the service that y'all are providing for our community, not only producers, but homeowners. You know, it's really important that we understand what's going on out in our yard and our gardens. Oftentimes, we won't get, folks will call up or they'll send an email, and it's not checking on you to say, hey, how are you doing? It's, I've got a problem out in my garden.
We do have a phone line and an email and a Facebook site, as well as an Instagram outreach on there, but we're a small unit. The Texas Plant Disease Diagnostic Lab here in College Station, we do have a head diagnostician and a number of students that are working in there. It's very difficult, especially during the summertime, to get back in a timely fashion to everyone. Especially this is when we get most of our samples, and so those need to be processed. But we try to get back to as many as we can and as quickly as we can, and we do get a whole bunch of different types of questions. A lot of the samples we get mostly from consultants, arborists, landscapers, whatnot, folks in the commercial arena with that. And a lot of the inquiries that tend to come in from homeowners, we like to redirect them back to the county extension office with the hopes that if it's something that is common in that county, we do share our findings, especially those that come from residential homeowners, back with the county agents so that they would have a better understanding of what might be going on with plant health in their own counties. And we do get excited as plant pathologists. I do want to remind folks that we are plant disease people, not merely just plant people, but we love diseases. And so when there's something unique, something, I guess you could say, a little bit more challenging to figure out, that's what drives our passion to try and learn and understand those things.
When I'm with a client, Kevin, I understand what you're saying. And there's a challenge, and I get all excited, and they look very worried.
Yes.
And I say,
yes.
well, I try to dial it back a bit and, empathize with them and try to discover what it is that is happening out in the landscape. And I do appreciate the service that y'all have, and certainly we work collaboratively with the lab as well.
And I do want to make it clear too, being the director of the plant clinic is one of the hats that I wear. And even though I'm the director, most of the day-to-day work and operations is done by head diagnostician Hannah Ayala. I'm also an extension specialist, so I do have other responsibilities to work with the commercial side of things, with ornamentals and so on, as it pertains to diagnostics, and also what we call phytosanitary or biosecurity type issues related to plant diseases. So I do have students that work on various projects looking at different plant pathogens, looking at methods of how to diagnose or detect them. And I do get to wear a third hat, which is the Associate Department Head of the Department of Plant Pathology and Microbiology. So through that, we have roughly about 8 faculty members in extension or extension specialists that are located throughout the state. Basically, our mission is to respond and provide support to our county agents, to our growers, our agricultural industry folks dealing with any kind of a plant disease type or plant health related issues. And the plant clinic, the Texas Plant Disease Diagnostic Lab in College Station is the hub lab. It's the one that has been around the longest, but we do have 2 other labs located in different parts of the state. The Texas High Plains Plant Disease Diagnostic Lab, located at the High Plains Research and Extension Center in Canyon, that deals primarily with row crops and small grains. So it's has the ability to be a little bit more specialized. But then, guess what? Even though they may just be focusing on small grain related type issues, we still have folks that come in with tree questions or ornamental questions or fruit questions for that matter. So in some sense, we have our specialty, but we are, as a disease specialist, should be able to at least help find some answers to those type of questions, or at least we know which colleague to redirect some of those questions to. So we're very fortunate to have this little network of us to be able to help the folks in the state and beyond.
And where are the other 2 labs, or where are the other labs located?
So the High Plains Plant Disease Diagnostic Lab is located in Canyon,
Yes.
Formerly Amarillo Center, but now that center has moved. The High Plains Research and Extension Center has moved to the Canyon area. And the other lab is the Texas Plant Virus Diagnostic Lab that's located in Weslaco, and that is it's not really an open lab, but it's a specialized lab to help provide support for Texas Department of Ag as well as USDA related to emerging and exotic plant virus type disease issues.
Okay. Wow. Is there any newly emerging pathogen that you'd like to share with the public at this time?
Thinking about some of the things that folks may hear, there's not very much stuff that has been going on, at least in the ornamental side of things, in terms of specific diseases. However, I think it would be important for folks to know that ornamentals, there are many different types of plants, and the trading of those ornamental plants occur in a global system. You may have plants that grow natively in, let's say, Africa or Central America, and then cuttings of those would be imported into this country, and so on, for propagation and eventual sale to the homeowners. Those pathways are often monitored by various governments, including ours, to ensure that those plants remain healthy and safe for our consumption. And the purpose of that is to make sure that we protect our agriculture and our natural resources from exotic and emerging pests and pathogens that we may not have currently in this country or in our neck of the woods. A few things that has been around for the past couple of years. One was laurel wilt. That is a fungal disease that actually popped up about 6 to 8 years ago. I think it was 6 years ago in the Houston area, but it had come in and became a huge issue for the avocado industry in Florida because it would cause a wilt. Unfortunately, it would hit laurel plants, and in our case, I think it was the red bay, which was affected in the Houston area. And so we have been continually monitoring it over the past few years to kind of make sure that we can contain it and keep it limited to that small area, and hopefully can eradicate it. And another disease that has been around probably close to 15 years now in the news is a disease commonly known as sudden oak death. Just for the folks, this is an oomycete disease caused by Phytophthora ramorum. We do not have it in Texas, or at least it's not established in Texas. Initially, when we had that situation, it was coming in with azaleas and some other woody ornamentals, particularly from the Pacific Northwest area. And we did have some interceptions that were made by the USDA Animal Plant Health Inspection Service, as well as TDA. And those plants that were imported into the state were destroyed. My lab actually has a survey team that monitors this disease with a grant from the U.S. Forest Service in a way to keep an eye to make sure that those nurseries that may have received those plants all those years ago, that we are not seeing this pathogen, fungus-like pathogen, pop up in the streams or river or on plants that are natively here or established here. So I'm glad to say that so far we have not found any of that being established in our natural environment or even in our residential environment. So far, so good.
So far, so good.
And so we're keeping an eye on it.
For those particular pathogens, especially the ones responsible for sudden oak death, can they be transmitted by dead wood? Cordwood.
Yeah, so, that's a lot of questions regarding that. Can you transmit or transfer the pathogen on wood, on plant debris, on soil, and that sort of thing? And it really depends on the pathogen that you're dealing with. In the case of sudden oak death with Phytophthora ramorum, it's an oomycete. So those of you that are interested in science, that's a great group to actually take a look at, because it looks like a fungus, acts like a fungus, but it actually produces a spore that can swim. As such, it utilizes water very easily, bodies of water, to spread out very quickly. Could it be on diseased plant material? Yes, it could be, if it's still alive and active. But however, if the wood is dried out and perhaps even treated in some ways with heat, I don't think that would survive as well. So that's one of those situations where we have a pathogen that is, I guess you could say, a little bit more unstable when exposed to our environment. So I think because of that, it may be a reason why we don't see it getting established as easy here in Texas, where it's much, much warmer than in the Pacific Northwest. So
That's very interesting.
right. But in general, I would say, as a general rule of thumb, a number of fungal-like or fungal pathogens can be moved on plant material or plant debris. So it would always be good if you're going camping and you want to take wood with you, keep it contained. Whether it's in a trash bag or something, keep it covered up, because that way you at least practice some level of containment and reduce the potential of it, being the vector carrying it for long distances and releasing it.
Yes.
And that is, I think, often the case with some of the new introductions into this country, or other countries also take those kind of precautions. They want to protect their natural resources, their agricultural resources as well. And so, I just got back from Europe a couple of days ago, and those who have traveled out of country will remember that when they return to the United States, oftentimes you have to go through a custom border patrol, and at some points of entry you have those little dogs called a beagle, and they will sniff out food material and plant material, fresh plant material. And the reason there is not that they want you to not have it, but those are things that could potentially harbor and pathogens, whether it's a human pathogen or a plant pathogen for that matter. And it's just a precaution in a manner to prevent incursion of those things into this country. So that is a thing that this government, at least one of the governmental agencies, is doing to help protect our resources. So to the listeners out there, I encourage you, when you read stuff about traveling out of country and coming back, please don't bring back seeds. Please don't bring back cuttings or whatnot, because that flower might look great, but you don't know what's on it. It's probably best to find a source that have legitimately brought those things into this country, that have undergone those testing and the various treatments.
Oh, that's great advice for the listeners, certainly. It reminds me of when we went to Seattle, and for school. I went to Seattle for school.
Okay.
But we had to go through California, and of course, there's very strict
Oh, yes.
Policies regarding bringing plant material through California, because it could affect, you could be that person that affects the entire agricultural industry, so.
It's interesting, because I think you just reminded me of a situation even within this state, the state of Texas, that we do have quarantine areas for a couple of diseases on citrus. Particularly, I'm thinking about citrus canker. There are a couple of diseases. That's one of those that are of concern, because that disease has been detected and is known to be in Texas. So it was. We do know that there are places where that disease is established in the Rio Grande Valley, and we also know of locations in the Upper Gulf Coast that has where this bacterial pathogen, disease caused by a bacterial pathogen, has been detected. And notice, and the quarantine rules, and I don't think a lot of people realizes this, that there are rules about moving plants, not fruit, but plants itself, from a quarantine zone into a non-quarantine zone. Part of that is to try and protect our commercial citrus producing area in the Rio Grande Valley. Currently, with the bacterial canker type situation, there are various strains that are involved. The strain that has been detected in the Rio Grande Valley is one that primarily targets limes, Mexican limes. So it has what we call a narrow host range, and it doesn't do very much damage on the grapefruit, which is what we produce commercially a lot. At the residential and more of the hobbyist type area that's occurring in the upper Gulf Coast, we do have an additional strain that we find, which is the Asian type strain. And the Asian type strain is unfortunately a lot more aggressive than the other strain. And so we don't want that Asian strain to have the opportunity to get down to the Rio Grande Valley. So the next time when you drive out of counties like Montgomery County, Harris County, I think Galveston County, and Fort Bend County, if you look on the side of the road, you might see a little signage that says, "You're leaving the quarantine zone. Do not transport any citrus plant." It's not a very big sign that I recall, but it's there.
Yes. I used to live in the area, of course, and worked with yourself as well as other staff members. Janice Tees, I think, was an inspector, citrus inspector.
That's correct.
Very, very important for us.
Yeah.
You know, we can grow citrus here, limited kinds of citrus, but making sure that they're purchased locally through a nursery that has gone through a certification or that is adhering to those policies that are set forth by USDA and TDA as well.
And in fact, I think most of the citrus that are produced commercially and sold commercially here are produced through the Clean Plant program. So, as you purchase those plants locally, you can be assured that from where it's sourced from to the retailer, there's what we call a chain of custody. You know who has handled it and where it has gone. What we don't want to happen that it has gone into a quarantine zone and stayed there for a bit, where it may have the opportunity to pick up the pathogen.
Yes, of course. And then once you've gone through that process, and then folks will call me up and say, "Stephen, why didn't my mandarin make it through the last hard freeze that we had?" That's a totally different story. That
is correct. I did try to grow a bunch of lemon trees in my backyard, and I said, I'll get the lemon tree to grow for about 4 to 5 years before we'll get a nice, good freeze incidence that will take it out. And so I like to think of folks growing either mandarin oranges or that sort of things. You would have a lot more success growing those in some sort of a container that you can roll it into the garage or at least into some structure to protect it from the cold. So, right. And oftentimes when you think about plant health, it's not always a pathogen that's involved. It could be an environmental factor. It could be an interaction between the plant and the soil environment. Or I think a lot of times people don't realize we are our own worst enemies. And I want to bring that up this year because it's been an unusual year in the sense that we got a lot of water. And I think some of your listeners may also recognize that they see sprinklers going off in the rain.
Yes.
That's a little bit too much water. And with the heat, I think in the plant clinic, we've been also getting an uptick of issues on ornamentals showing root rot type related problems. A lot of times this may have a fungal or fungal-like pathogen associated with it, but there are times where the diagnostician could look at it and find no pathogen, where the roots could deteriorate by itself because it's been in too much moisture. So,
well, that brings me to a point or an email that I shared with Kevin, folks. Remember, this is a live program, so you can call in 979-845-5689. We do have a plant pathologist and an expert in the field, Dr. Kevin Ong, with us, and we'd love to have your support, continued support, and answer some of those questions that you may have. Don't be shy. Remember, it's just us having tea with each other, right? It's tea with Stephen B. So just call up 979-845-5689. 5689. Now, I did share I did have a client. I did have a client that asked for me to come out talking about this collaborative experience. Of course, the agents are the front line for the community. We do get calls across the board from different residents asking for advice or possibly a site visit. In this one instance, a gentleman called up. I talked to him through the issue he was having. He had some oaks that looked like they were being affected by something. Of course, the first thing that entered his mind is oak wilt. That was the very first thing. But I said, well, if you can send me some pictures. In the meantime, I talked to him about the cultivation or culture of those oaks, the live oaks that he had on his property. And we decided that it would be best for me to make a site call. No charge. That's part of what we do for the community, right? I go out to a site visit. But we'll try to discover it first to see if it is meaningful for me to make a site visit. So we made that call, went out, and I said, I can't. This could be cultural, right? It could be the soil was heavily compacted. He had just removed a lot of. He had changed the way the water cruises through the environment itself. But I suggested to him, we went through some situations, and I said, why don't you send in some samples to the Texas Plant Disease Diagnostic Lab? And he did. And I was really delighted to receive a copy of the report of that investigation.
Yes, I'm glad they do, because one of the policies that I've instituted when I took over the clinic was that when we get samples coming in from homeowners, unless they specify for privacy, we would always send a copy of that result back to them, as well as the county agent in their county, with the hope that if there's any follow-up, if there's that the county agent can do that. But also we wanted to make sure that the knowledge that we have, the observations that were made at the clinic was shared with the county agent as well, so they can get a better understanding of what's occurring in the county. And if you actually have this reports over a couple of years, you can actually map it out and figure out when certain things or certain times of the year when certain things would happen. And so it's a good resource of information that can be utilized to help the folks in your county. So that's what we intend for that results to go back. And thank you for bringing this up. A lot of times with trees, I would say in the last 10 years, 15 years or so, the weather conditions have not been, the environmental conditions has not been really conducive to trees. I think most of us remember when we had the Snowmageddon. I don't remember how many years ago from that one that we had roughly, depending on where you are in Texas, somewhere between 5 to 7 days of below freezing temperatures. All the time that the plants, especially the trees, were already coming out of dormancy. As a result, we had a lot of damage on the trees, especially the older trees. And we had mortality occurring, so a bunch of trees dying off over a period of 1 year after the incident to 5, 6, 7 years after the incident. We're still seeing some of that effect. And I think folks also need to realize is one of those things is the roots are extremely sensitive. So depending on the type of soils you're in, if the soil did get frozen, that could be damage to the roots. And if you think of the roots as being the tools to suck in the nutrients for the plants, if the roots become unhealthy, if the roots get hurt and unable to pick up the nutrients, you are going to see nutritional type responses on that tree. And I think quite oftentimes we have seen things on trees that are what we call chlorotic. They turn yellow. before there's any other type of symptoms. And oftentimes, when you see that, you have to ask, what is going on around my roots? In residential neighborhoods, I think one has to be real careful, because if you have established trees there and you just build a house, or you build a shed, or you put in a new water line or irrigation piping, and you have cut through some of those roots, realize those can actually have impact on the health of the tree. Best case scenario, you didn't cut off enough roots and you didn't make such a big impact that the tree can recover. Worst case scenarios, you actually hit one of those main roots that the tree relies on, and you will then tend to see a decline of that tree. And I would tell folks what oftentimes we have noticed is the initial decline is often slow, or at least you might see a little bit of damage in year 1. You might see a little bit more in year 2 and 3. And when it hit that point of no return, it might look great, and then in about 2-3 months, it just turns dead. And so a lot of times we get complaints where people say, my tree just died. But it doesn't. So keep an eye out on the tree. Notice differences that are occurring there. And oftentimes when you see it, keep looking at it, because those actually will tell you a story and perhaps give you clues to share with a diagnostician if you utilize us to help find some answers.
It is a long game with some of these plants that we're working with. Short game for some, annuals, but certainly trees. I like to say that there are forever friends. Where are you going to put them? And it means cultivating them. And you're so right, Kevin. It's monitoring them. Sometimes that is over a span of time. And keeping a journal, if you have to.
And a lot of times right now, I said, we are in a period of time where each one of us is very likely to have a camera in our pocket on our phone. And so a quick photo of it in your album may be something that you can look back at and say, I guess I didn't notice this before, but I can see a progression of what's happening. And so we have much, much better recording tools to help our memories. And so I would hope, listeners would be able to utilize them as a way of recording. And it does not need to take a lot of time. You can spend a lot of time learning about your tree, that particular cultivar, what its likes and dislikes is, and how sensitive it is to some environment. But you don't have to spend that time. Just keep an eye on it.
Yes. So this report, turns out there wasn't any pathogen that was identified, but that was great information.
Right. And unfortunately, too, I think what we see in the results, too, we do actually utilize some generic information in there. And so when you look at the report, there are suggestions for the submitter of what to look at. And I think we provided quite a bit of ideas of, hey, take a look at potential things that may happen in the last few weeks. Did you use any sort of chemicals? Was there some disturbance through construction or compaction or whatnot? And so just those various things to try and hopefully jog some memory if there is something that was out of place, if there was something that was done suddenly that might have contributed to that symptoms.
Yes. I received I had a surprise image that I showed Kevin. It's it's in a way it's like, well, let's try to figure this out together. What's going on? There was a tree with a large section taken out of it, and we were just discussing what that might be. And turns out it's our friend the squirrel.
So here's the funny thing is oftentimes we see those sort of damage in years where it's drier, where what I would call varmints, and this would include squirrels, some birds, porcupines, especially in central Texas area.
Porcupines?
Oh,
So
yeah.
they're tree climbers.
They can climb up to some degree, and they can do a lot of damage to the bark, and so they'll strip the bark, and just so that folks would understand is the nature of a tree, where those vascular systems, the what we call the xylem and the phloem, where it would transport nutrient either from the roots to the leaves, or food that were made through photosynthesis from the leaves to the roots. If that gets damaged, basically you just destroy the what we call the lifeline, or the pipelines for resources. So there is potential that when you get that stripping of the bark that may have destroyed the vascular system, then everything that's going to be above in the canopy from where that area is very likely going to die or show decline symptoms very quickly, because it's not getting any resources. So yeah, the picture that he showed me is one that was, I don't know, it looks like it's pretty high up. So
Yes, it
yeah,
does.
squirrels will do that. They would strip off a strip of the bark. And I think I also mentioned to you that what was interesting in the picture, it looks like the bark was somewhat loose, which to me as a pathologist, it would make me wonder, those bark should be a lot tighter onto the wood. And so with it being loose, what else is happening? Is that tree in decline? Is that tree in stress in some sense, where the bark is somewhat trying to pop off? And oftentimes that's a sign of a serious decline.
Yes.
So makes me wonder if that squirrel is going after something that was under the bark.
Right. Yeah. It's either going to be another varmint or maybe a resource, for moisture. We could only guess, but it's a little shocking. When the client saw that, the residents saw that, of course, they asked, what can we do to prevent that? And I said, well, you can put, it appears to be a large live oak tree. They can put baffles. Squirrels will not jump up more than about 4 feet, if that much. And so, but it may not be practical, and then they can cruise from your roof onto your tree,
And that's a really hard thing to do. I think, the baffles would work with porcupines, because that's what they'll do, is they'll climb up the trunk. But with squirrels being so agile as they are, baffles are not going to work with them as well.
So don't name your squirrels.
No, they're not always your best friends, because they will take things from your yard and your garden. And actually, I want to share with your listeners and you a story from a couple of years ago, where I actually got a bunch of pictures with something that looked similar at the crotch of a tree, and I seem to recall, I think that was a peach tree or something like that from the Austin area. And they were wondering what it is. I said, I don't know, but it's some kind of varmint. And I found out they had some game camera, and so they set it up. 2 weeks later, I got additional pictures of porcupines doing that damage. I wish I could find those pictures now and post them on our Facebook at some point. Yeah. And it may be there. I may have posted it several years ago, but that was a fun thing. For some homeowners, I realize it's not a good thing for the tree, but if you do see those type of things and you have access to a game camera, might not be a bad idea to put one up and see if you can catch the varmint in action.
Yes. I think that's the fun part of our job.
That's the fun part, yes. Trying to figure out who did it.
Well, we did have another client that had written in, and I think it's more of a common malady with roses. They'd actually sent a picture, a very clear picture, so thank you very much for that. We appreciate that as part of this investigative journey. Any information that you have, whether it's verbal or, a clear picture tells a distinctive story, can tell a distinctive story, at least that helped. So it's a rose that's in a container, and the client is concerned that she has black spot, and we actually did see a little bit of on the plant itself.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that image with me as well. Black spot disease of roses is a pretty common disease of roses, but I think most people realize that there are many different varieties or cultivar of roses, and each one of those cultivars could have a different response to the black spot disease, which is caused by a fungus. Some you're going to get much darker spots, and to the point that it could defoliate that whole rose plant. And other times you would get tiny spots because it's somewhat limited by that particular rose variety having some type of resistance to it. Regardless, there are a lot of roses that are susceptible to black spot of roses, but there are a lot of, I guess you could say, solutions to that. Everything from synthetic to natural type fungicides. One thing that folks need to remember when you use fungicides, whether it's natural or synthetic, the key of using it is timing. Most of the time, these products are going to work best as a preventative. So if you catch it early, put the products out early, and understand what the product does. And all this information is going to be found on the label of that product that you purchase. And it might even say that if conditions are conducive for the disease to occur, you may have to spray it every 7 days or every 14 days. And those things, that piece of information, had been gathered through research. So it's not a something that we pull out of the air, or the company pulls out of the air and said, it'll be good because then we can get people to use it. But no, there is scientific-based research behind those recommendations that are on the label. So it's really important. Whatever product that you decide to use in terms of a plant protection product, make sure to read the label. Here are a couple of things to be concerned about: the rates, how much to use. Too little is not good. Too much is not good. You want to use just right. And also timing. When is it best used? Because again, remember, you are using some sort of a poison, whether it's from a synthetic source or a natural source, but you want it to have an activity or to have an action on your target. As such, your target must be susceptible at the time. So think about it this way. If you want to target that fungus, you got to make sure that it's at a stage where the fungus is exposed and you can get that material to it so that it can take action against it. Black spot of roses is just one of the many diseases of roses. We did see quite a bit of that this year, both in commercial landscapes and hobbies and home landscapes. We also see, depending on where you are in Texas, issues with Cercospora as well as anthracnose. Surprisingly, we also noticed early on that there had been quite a bit of issue with chili thrips and aphids as well. And I think that's still ongoing. Part of the reason I know all this is I actually have a student that's working on a rose project. And so we do have a rose cultivar trial looking for resistance against rose rosette virus or rose rosette disease that are located. We have a test plot in the Bryan area, one in Waco on Baylor University campus, and one in the Grapevine, one of the city parks there. And this 3 research demonstration is actually repeated too. I think there are 2 locations in Ohio, 1 location in Tennessee, 2 locations in Georgia, and abbreviated test plot at the Missouri Botanical Gardens in St. Louis. So in a way that hopefully in about a year or two, that student will have enough data to look at to see, gee, is there a variety that is uniform throughout the United States, or at least a large part of the United States, that would perform very well against rosette disease or black spot disease.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So,
I didn't realize how extensive the research and collaboration was across the United States.
yes, that's one of a fairly funded projects that's going on, and that's only one part of it. My student Connor Cook is also working on another project with our collaborators in Ohio and Georgia, which is looking at miticides. So at this point, we do know that rosette disease is caused by a virus that's transmitted by an aerophyte mite, a real microscopic mite. The problem is we don't have a good product for it. I think they have looked at various miticidal product over the last 4 or 5 years, and it's just been confusing in a sense that one year certain things would work, but the next year it wouldn't. So we're still trying to figure that out, and there are some new products in the pipeline that we're looking at, and hopefully have some sort of a short-term solution as we work towards a long-term solution for rosette disease. And just for the listeners out there, there is a series of fact sheets on diseases of roses. You can find that stuff on the AgriLife Learn website. So that's agrilife.learn.tamu.edu. And when you get in there, in the search engine, just do rose diseases, and you should be able to find a number. I think we have 6 or 7 fact sheets that are of different diseases of roses.
Certainly it's a valuable resource, and folks, reminder that most of the publication, I'd say, I'm just going to ballpark, 95% of the publications are no charge. You get them, download them.
I believe it might be actually more than that too.
Okay.
That part of our mission as the Extension Service is to provide such sort of scientific-based information to help the folks in Texas, and so we're glad to be able to do that. And folks, head out there. This is a good resources, oftentimes a free resource that you can have access to.
Yes, great resources, as a matter of fact. Well, folks, we've got about 10 more minutes on the clock. You are welcome to call 949-845-5689. We'd love to hear from you, and it's an opportunity to talk to our expert, Dr. Kevin Ong. He doesn't bite. It's okay. But please feel free to call. We'll take your call. In the meantime, I want to interrupt really quick and give a shameless plug for a program that I've got this coming Saturday. So the horticulture agent sits in his armchair, smoking cigars, eating grapes. I'm kidding, folks. I don't do that in the office. But certainly I love to give programs as well. I'm going to be giving a program for our Brazos County Master Gardeners are hosting a Learning at the Library program with the Muntz Library. That's downtown Bryan. This coming Saturday, it's my turn at the bat. I'll be talking about landscaping with native plants. So I'm a card-carrying member of the Native Plant Society of Texas. Certainly I recognize the importance of including plants that we often take for granted when we're out in natural areas. And certainly I want to explore how you can incorporate that into your own landscape design. Join me this Saturday. No charge for the program. Starts at 10 o'clock in the morning. So if you're an early riser, maybe that's a little too early for some folks, but certainly I welcome you to come on out this coming Saturday, July the 18th at the Muntz Library in downtown Bryan. Well, Kevin, thank you so much for being here. I mean, it's certainly a pleasure to have you here.
Well, I thank you for, extending the invitation to help and be a part of this show, and I'm really excited that we are able to do this segment called Ask the Plant Doctor once a month. And I won't be here next month, but head diagnostician Hannah would be here.
Oh,
and I would like to say that, hey, the person who does the work usually have a lot of that information. So I hope, y'all listeners and you will come up with a lot of questions for her. And not only that, she would also be able to give you a better pulse of what's going on in this state, in this area, of what sort of samples we are seeing in the clinic.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I know the clinic is not available for tour. There's some serious work that's going on there.
We do, make ourselves available for tours by certain groups, like we'll do with the Master Gardener training, and give them a view of what we do in there. We obviously take some time to introduce our new county agents from around the state to that resource, so they understand what's available to them and how they can utilize us, because by us providing that training for them to provide good samples and good information, that tend to make our life easier, but also allows us to give a good quality diagnosis back to the county agent to help his constituents. We occasionally will have requests from school groups or homeschoolers, and it depends on the time of the year. We are often busy somewhere between March to usually about October, November. So the times that we are open for or be conducive to have a tour would be November, December, January, or February.
Well, I've been privileged to be able to come out and bring my Master Gardeners in training to the lab, and I do thank you for that service, certainly, Kevin. But the lab is open to receive samples as well,
yes.
Always.
And in fact, we do encourage homeowners, if you have a plant health issue that you need support with, reach out to your local county extension office first. Oftentimes, like I said, we share back the results that we get from homeowners. So if that county has a Master Gardener group, which these are volunteers that help provide some gardening advice to folks in the county, they may have an answer readily available for you. And if they can't find it, or if something difficult, then they might say, hey, you do have to send this to the clinic. But if you want to reach out to the clinic as well, you can find us online. That is Plant Clinic, one word, plantclinic.tamu.edu. You can access our submission forms there, as well as look at our fee schedule. Unfortunately, it's not a free service. With the diagnostic tools and whatnot, with molecular tools and all that, it gets quite expensive to run some of these tests, and so we do put a charge on certain things to try and recover some of our costs. And at any time at all, if you ever feel like you want to help support the clinic, whether with students or training or exposure, for students to have opportunity there. These are undergraduate students that come out and work at the clinic. Please do reach out to us in the Department of Plant Pathology and Microbiology, and we would love to accept your donations.
Yes. Well, it's a great service that your clinic, that you are providing to the community, as well as to the professional community across the state, and the connection that you have throughout the United States. I think that's very interesting, and certainly something that our listeners have been made aware of through our interview today.
Right, and that's also one thing that I want to point out too. Even though the Texas Plant Disease Diagnostic Lab has been around since 1957, and really physically present since 1982, we are part of the National Plant Diagnostic Network that was established in 2002. And the National Plant Diagnostic Network is a network of all diagnostic labs. And often these plant diagnostic labs are associated with land-grant universities in the various states. So realize that if you are not a resident of the state, there is very likely a diagnostic lab in the state that are able to help you with plant health type questions. And you can always go find that lab. I believe the National Plant Diagnostic website is npdn.org. And so you can actually take a look at the American map and click on the state and find out which lab is there.
Excellent. Well, Kevin, I want to thank you so much for your time today. Folks, we will be welcoming back staff from the Texas Plant Disease Diagnostic Lab, Hannah Ayala. We look forward to working with her and having an interview with her next month as well. I will update you on the actual date of that because, today I'm thinking of squirrels and other things. But seriously, I will get back with y'all and let y'all know when we will schedule that on a regular basis. So, Dr. Ong, Kevin, thank you so much for your time today.
It's my pleasure, and I love doing this with you and just sitting around and talking about plant health.
Yes, sir. Very important. And folks, remember that we are available for you every Thursday, 12 o'clock, straight up. It's a live program, except for when it's not. The majority of them are. I would say, maybe 3 times out of the year I'm not at the helm. But certainly we welcome your questions. This is an opportunity for you to call in live, 979-845-5689. You can try to call now, but we're about 2 minutes from the top of the clock. So if you do, I'll help you out as best I can. Remember, you can also send us emails if you want to reach out vicariously through me to Dr. Ong's lab. If you have a question about plant health, you can always send me an email, gardensuccess@tamu.edu, or the lab also has an email address as well, or contact.
That is correct. Our email address is plantclinic@tamu.edu.
Yes.
And of course, I would always direct folks, if you got an Instagram account or a Facebook account, go look for us. Our handle is Texas Plant Clinic. That's TX Plant Clinic.
Excellent. Easy to get to, folks. Bookmark it. Well, folks, again, we're almost at the top of the hour. Thank you very much for your participation and support of the programs that are produced by KAMU. Remember, we're here for the benefit of our community. We're here to explore our discipline, which in this case is horticulture. I know to the regular folks you may think, well, what's horticulture? It's all about gardening. Well, it's kind of one and the same if you think about it. We're talking about form, but we're mostly focusing on function. It's great to know how your plants work. You don't know how to figure what's going on unless you know how the plants themselves, the biology of the plants, how they function in the environment, your local environment, and how you interact with that. Once we understand the plants themselves, then we can work with them more successfully. Maybe start making correlations with insects or diseases that may be present in your landscape. I know you're doing your best. Remember, you've got skills. We're just trying to help you improve the skills you already have. We'll see you next Thursday, folks. Until then, of course, I will see you in the garden.
You've been listening to Garden Success with Texas A&M AgriLife Extension horticulturist Stephen Brueggerhoff. Join us again next week as Stephen discusses your questions about gardening and landscaping in the Brazos Valley.
Garden Success is brought to you in part by Martha's Bloomers. For over 25 years, residents of Central Texas have visited Martha's Bloomers for plants, art and home decor, and a full-service restaurant featuring handcrafted meals and a wide selection of hot teas and desserts. Martha's Bloomers, located on Highway 6 in Navasota.